Welcome. If you usually find that you're one of the tightest people in the room, then this video is going to be for you, specifically for your hips, as you might have done a few follow-alongs or tried a few stretches or positions in the past, and a lot of them might be like really awkward or just not realistic at all. So today, because my hips, they have become super locked up from just all the hours I spent gaming and watching Netflix and just being a very sedentary 19, 20-year-old. I had to work on them, and I became a coach at the same time, got to see a lot of other stiff people and how they moved and what they struggled with. So I hope that with today's follow along, you're gonna be able to do everything that I ask you to do. I know how good and how relieving it can feel to get a solid hip mobility workout or session in, and I'm hoping I can give you that same feeling. Just 2 rules for today. Rule number 1 is to not push through pain or any pinching sensations. And secondly, if you're not sure about anything, don't be afraid to ask in the comments below. That's the best way to learn. So without further ado, let's get right into it. We're gonna start off with a hip internal rotation stretch. So for this, you can sit down in a chair or a bench. We're gonna place one hand over our knee, and we're gonna pull our knee inwards until we find a stretch in our hip. And this can feel like a very different stretch compared to other hip stretches. For a lot of us, including me, it can feel like quite a bony sensation, quite a deep sensation, and that's because we are rotating our hip. So it's getting into some of the deepest layer of tissue there in our hip. So if you're a bit on the tighter side, you might have to sit down on something higher, or if your legs are a bit on the longer side, unlike mine, I'm a little shorty, then you might need to sit down on something higher, or just elevate whatever you're sitting on here. If you are a little bit more mobile, you might need to sit down on something lower, and only then you'll feel the stretch. And if you don't have something higher or lower to sit down on, you can always adjust the height of your foot, so you can place it on something a little higher there. Now, a few more things to play around with to find the right stretch for you, because we're all different, is moving your foot forward, scooting it back, moving it inwards, or moving it out away from you. Doing all of those will change the sensation of the stretch, and I just want you to play around with it a little bit to find a stretch that suits you. Now, we've hopefully already been holding here for a little bit while I've been talking. If you haven't held the stretch for 30 seconds already, I would recommend pausing the video and just going Zen mode, just taking a few deep breaths. From here, we're gonna build some strength in our hip, and we're gonna go for a few contractions. So while keeping your knee still, you can have your other hand on top of your knee as well if you'd like. We're going to actively start pushing our knee up into our hand, but very lightly, especially if you're new. Make sure it feels nice and safe. Let's go for 10, 9, 10 seconds here. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. You should feel a contraction in your hip. 3, 2, 1. After that, go ahead and relax. We'll breathe for 10 seconds. If you need to exit that stretch slightly, you can. If you got a cramp, you can shake it out before coming back in. If you feel like you might be able to sink a little deeper, you're more than welcome to. Okay, let's go for a second round. We're gonna go for 3 rounds total. Go ahead and start pushing that knee back up into that hand for 10, 9, and as you're pushing up, if you've done this routine a few times already, so if you're coming back to this, if you've built up some experience, if you're not a complete beginner anymore, you can start pushing up a little bit stronger after each round. And relax for another 10 seconds. Take some deep breaths. Now, if at any point you feel like, okay, that is more than enough hip mobility for me, please feel free to come out of it and just rest while I continue talking. Because if you're completely new to a stretch, you might need to build up some tolerance, and that can take some time. Let's go for that third and final round. Again, adjusting the position of this foot to find a nicer stretch sensation if you need to. Let's go ahead and push that knee up into that hand for 10, 9, 8, and as you're pushing up, you're just making sure that your knee isn't actually moving, so it's staying in that stretch. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax for 10 more seconds before we exit. Long, deep breaths, slow exhales. And then you can pick your knee up and out. and you can just shake that leg off. Whew. You can move it up and down, side to side, just whatever feels good for you. And then we're gonna switch sides. Once again, pulling that knee inwards, for most of us, for most people, is gonna elicit a stretch. But again, if you're a little bit on the longer side or the tighter side, you might need to sit down on a higher chair, you might need to sit down on some elevation. And if you're not feeling a stretch, you might need to sit down a little bit lower, or you might need to elevate that foot as well on any object you have around the house. Now I think I've been talking for around 20 seconds, so we're gonna hold for 10 more, but if you want a full 30 seconds and we're not there yet, pause the video, we'll start in just a second. One more deep breath. And let's begin that first contraction, lightly starting to drive that knee up into this hand. And if it doesn't feel good to do that contraction from this stretch position, you can move the knee out of that stretch slightly and then start pushing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Deep breaths. We'll rest for 10 seconds. If you need to come out a little bit, you can. If you need to shake it out, you can. If you would like to go a little deeper, you can also do that. And let's go in for that second round, pushing that knee up into that hand again for 10, 9. And the reason why we do these contractions is because it builds strength within the hip, so it builds some safety, and it also allows us to go deeper into the stretch, in most cases, after we do the contraction. And relax. So these contractions help us build more permanent changes more efficiently within our hips, rather than if we were to just passively stretch and stay relaxed. Let's go for a third and final round. Let's push that knee back up into that hand for 10, 9, 8. And again, as you're pushing, if you have a bit more experience here, feel free to push a little bit stronger. You can push as hard as you want, as long as it feels safe the entire time. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax your hip. Back into Zen mode, just relax. And again, cramping can be quite normal when doing hip mobility. It can almost feel like a sniper just went bam, straight into the hip, and you have to come out, and that's okay if that happens. So keep in mind, cramps can occur. And they're completely fine. Cramps are completely safe. Well done. And just shake it off. Do whatever you need to do to recover. Stand up. Walk around if you need to. Next up, we're going to go into a hip flexor stretch. So go ahead and grab yourself a mat if you have a mat, if you're not on a soft surface already, or you can be hardcore and just go knee to hard floor. That's okay as well. We're going to get into a lunge. So I want you to place one knee on the floor. If you have a chair nearby for some balance, I would recommend holding on to that chair. And then from there, we're going to just push our hips forward until we find a stretch in our hip flexors here. Now, if that front leg feels a little bit jammed up, a little bit painful here, you can walk it forward. That's okay. If you're not getting too much of a stretch and it turns out that you're actually not the tightest person in the room, then what I want you to do is I want you to tuck your tailbone under, go into a posterior pelvic tilt, and to maintain that as you lean forward, and that hip flexor stretch should come on a lot stronger. I'm going to change the angle of my body just so you can see me a little bit clearer. And again, we're going to start off with a 30-second hold. And again, if you're new to hip flexor stretching specifically, oh boy, this can be very, very taxing on the nervous system, very mentally challenging. So if you need to come out and shake it off a bit before continuing, then please, by all means, do so, because this was always a challenge for me. So from here, we're going to go for a contraction again to build some strength within the hip. So we're going to start to drive our knee down and forward through the floor, like we're trying to drag our knee forward, but we're actually not allowing it to move. As we do that, we should start to feel the hip flexor contract, and we're going to do that for 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. We should feel squeezing at the front of the hip here, and relax. And if you felt like that was more than enough for you, well done. pat on the back, take a break, come out, have a seat, and just skip forward or just wait for me to continue. So as we build more experience, we're going to be able to spend longer and longer amounts of time here. We're going to be able to put more effort into our hips. Let's go in for a second contraction. Go ahead and start driving your knee down and forward through the floor like you're trying to drag it forward towards that front foot. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax the hip, relax the rest of the body. Deep breaths for 10 seconds. If you need to exit that stretch a little bit, go ahead and exit that stretch. If you feel like you can sink deeper, go ahead and relax deeper into that stretch. Oh man, that's a struggle. Let's go for one more round of contractions. If you can and if it feels productive for you, drag that knee forward and down through the floor. Squeeze the front of the hip. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax and rest for 10 more seconds. Deep breaths, long exhales. Again, using your chair or your stool or whatever you have around you for balance. And then slowly exit out of there. Oh my goodness. You know what can feel really good after that? Just coming down into a child's pose. If your knees are okay with it, of course. Sinking your chest down towards your thighs. Just hanging out there for a second. All right, we're gonna go in for a second round of contractions. So go ahead and swap hips. Again, back knee on the floor. Push your hips forward until you find a stretch in the front of that back hip there. And again, we're using whatever we have available to us for balance. So while you hold there for 30 seconds, I'm just going to adjust my setup here just so you can see me a little bit better. Is that good? Can you see me okay? I hope so. Usually I would have a chair or a stool right in front of me here. So yes, if you would like to rest onto something right here, then please feel free to do so. Let's go ahead and start that first contraction, driving that knee down and forward through the floor like you're trying to drag it forward for 10, 9, 8, and as you're doing this, you're thinking about squeezing and contracting the muscles in the front of this back hip here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Deep breaths. Again, if you felt like that was enough for you, enough for your hips, if it's very intense already, you can either back out of that stretch and continue, or back out entirely. Have a rest. That's cool. Let's go in for a second round. Driving that knee down and forward through the floor for 10, 9, 8. And again, as you're doing this, if you have built up some experience, I'm more than happy for you to start increasing the intensity of that contraction as well. That's also cool. 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Deep breaths. If you're able to, sinking deeper into that stretch, but again, it's not necessary. If we're new to this, this can be very, very taxing, very, very intense. This stretch used to give me tears. Some people say that the hip flexor stretches release some emotions, some blocked up emotions. Let's go for one more. Driving down and forward for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Deep breaths. This is definitely making me feel some emotions of regret. And slowly pushing out of there. Beautiful work. Go ahead and shake it out. Next up, we're going to get into a hamstring stretch to work on our ability to move our hip in front of our body. Keep your chair nearby, and I would also grab another object for balance. This could be a wall next to you. This could be another chair. Also, you could use a broomstick. And I'm so sorry for that noise, but somebody has just started up a chainsaw next door. So I'll try and block that out with some editing tool, but we'll see how we go. We're gonna place our foot on top of our chair or bench. So just make sure it's low enough so that you can comfortably place your foot on top of it. From there, we're gonna maintain a knee bend. This can be just a slight amount of knee bend, or it can be quite a lot, just depending on what's comfortable for you. This is gonna allow us to get more of a stretch in the muscle belly of the hamstring. From there, we're going to lean forward until we find a hamstring stretch. Now, you can lean forward with a rounded back if that's comfortable for you. If you have trouble finding a stretch, however, you might need to open up your chest and push your belly button forward over the knee. And then we'll hold 30 seconds, taking some deep breaths. Again, using whatever you need near you for balance. And if you'd rather do this in a kneeling position, then by all means, you can stay here in this lunge and you can lean forward. That might be comfortable for a lot of us rather than standing. So here we go. We're gonna go for 2 contractions, 2 different types of contractions this time, not just one. So we're gonna start off the first contraction by driving our heel down and inwards slightly for 10 seconds. So we're driving down into the bench and inwards, like we're trying to curl our heel in towards our bum, but we're not actually allowing the heel to move, of course. And we're going for 10 seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now for the second contraction, we're trying to think about making our heel lighter on the bench or the chair. So we're trying to lift that heel away. This time we're thinking about contracting the front of the hip again, the hip flexors, to try and lift away. Again, if you cramp up, you might need to come out and shake it off. If not, just keep doing that. 10 seconds and relax. Take a few deep breaths. Again, if that was more than enough for you, you can exit that stretch and take a break. If you'd like to go deeper, you might find that you're able to go deeper. And let's go for a second round. Let's start driving that heel down and in towards us. You should feel a light contraction in the hamstrings, and you can keep this as light as you need so that it feels safe for you. 3, 2, 1, and away. Try and make that heel lighter on that bench or on that floor, of course, if you are on the floor, like you're trying to lift away. 3, 2, 1, go ahead and relax. Take some deep breaths. Once again, we're doing these contractions to teach our bodies how to actively use these lengthened and these new ranges of motion. Let's go in for one more round. Again, building this up a little bit stronger if you're comfortable with it is okay and beneficial. Let's drive down and in, squeezing the hamstring for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and away. Try and make that heel lighter on the bench there, squeezing the front of this hip here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and relax. Just take a few deep breaths before you come out. Once again, if it's hard to balance, use anything you need, anything you need. Chain yourself up to the wall. Use 2 broomsticks. Use a bench. Use a piano. Use whatever you have. Use a friend. Use a partner. You can kneel as well. Let's come out of there because we don't want these mobility drills to be any more uncomfortable than they already are. So let's go ahead and move on to the other side. And I'll demonstrate the kneeling variation now, and I'll do the kneeling variation. So, leg out in front, knee bent, toes up, leaning forward until you get a hamstring stretch. You can play around with moving that foot a little closer towards you, or you can play around with moving it a little further away, just whatever's comfortable there. You can have your back foot flat or up on your toes there, and then holding onto whatever you need for balance. Let's begin that first contraction after the 30-second hold, of course. And if you're still getting set up, just make sure that you've held this stretch for 30 seconds before we start our contractions. And again, I prefer having something right in front of me for some support and balance that I could lean into. I just have all of this stuff out of the way so that you can see my hips here. Contraction number 1, driving that heel down into the floor and in towards you like you're trying to curl that heel in, but without allowing it to move. 10 seconds, squeezing that hamstring. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now try and lift that heel away. And because we're in a stretch, it's not actually going to lift. So yeah, don't feel like a failure if you're not able to lift it up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Take some deep breaths. Again, if you need to exit that stretch slightly, you can. That's okay. Sometimes we don't even need to feel a stretch to work on our mobility. Sometimes it's about building some strength close to that stretch, and then we can slowly edge closer and closer when we're comfortable. Let's go in for a second contraction here, driving that heel down and in, squeezing the hamstring. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Try and lift that heel away, making it lighter on the floor, like you've got a weighing scale under that heel and you're trying to make your leg weigh as little as possible. You're squeezing the front of that hip flexor there. 3, 2, 1. Relax. Deep breaths. And just another reminder, if that was enough work for your hamstring, if you feel very fatigued, then you can come out and rest. Sometimes all we need is just one round of contractions to get an effective stimulus to create changes. Let's go in for one final round, driving that heel down and in towards us for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Try and lift and make that heel lighter on the floor. Another 10 seconds here. You're squeezing the front of the hip flexor. Again, cramps are quite common, so if you get a cramp, don't worry about it. You can come out and try again next time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. Take a few deep breaths before coming out. As you get more and more experienced, you'll be able to push through those cramps, and that could be quite beneficial. Go ahead and slowly exit. Ooh, well done. Shake out those hips. Grab a sip of water if you need. Again, we don't want to be any more uncomfortable than we already are. For our next stretch, all we're going to need is a wall. Now, I'm not using that wall over there. I'm using a bench just because that wall's a bit far away. You're not going to be able to see me too good. We're going to lie down in front of that wall. We're going to place one foot on the wall and then our other foot over our knee. And if that's not possible, you're just going to scoot back until it is. Now, your foot that's on the wall can be a little bit higher or a little bit lower, just depending on what's most comfortable for you. Now, to get a stretch, all you're gonna have to do is push your knee forward, scoot closer to the wall, or actively think about driving your bum down towards the floor. Or you can do all three until you find that stretch. Now you can have your foot or your heel over your thigh or your knee here, or you can shift your leg across and have a bit more of your shin on that thigh. Just do whatever feels most comfortable for you. We're gonna start off with that 30-second hold again. Just taking some deep breaths. Again, scooting further away from the wall. If that stretch is a bit too great, moving closer to the wall if you need more of a stretch. Now from here, we're gonna go for our contractions again. So let's begin by lightly driving our foot through our knee, like we're trying to create this motion here. So the motion is stemming from the hip. 4, 10, 9, 8. As you're doing this, you might start to feel a contraction in the glute that's being stretched. That's exactly what we want. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax and take some deep breaths. Relax the hip as much as you can. Again, your hand doesn't have to be on your knee. You might be getting just enough of a stretch on its own, but if you ever need more, you can push that knee forward for more of a stretch. Let's go in for a second round, pushing that foot through the knee. Again, if you're comfortable with this, you can play around with pushing a little bit stronger. So the stronger we can push, usually the better results we'll get. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Take some deep breaths again. And then we'll go in for a third and final round. Again, if this was more than enough for your hips, you can come out and have a rest. Let's go in for one more round, pushing that foot through the knee, starting to contract and squeeze the glute that's being stretched. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. And take 3 to 5 big deep breaths. And then we can slowly exit. All right, go ahead and switch sides. We'll start off with another 30-second hold. Again, if you need more of a stretch, you can scoot closer to the wall. You can push your knee forward, or you can think about driving your bum down towards the floor if you need less of a stretch. Just doing the opposite of those 3 things there. All right, let's begin. Pushing that foot through the knee. Again, like you're thinking about making this motion, sweeping that foot through. 10 seconds, we're contracting and we're squeezing the glute that's being stretched right now. 3, 2, 1, go ahead and relax. Deep breaths. Again, there's no need to hold the knee there. I just like doing that. And adjusting the stretch with that knee. That's just a preference of mine. I like to go a little deeper after each contraction, but there's no need to if you're not ready for it. Let's go for another one. Pushing that foot through the knee for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and relax. Deep breaths again, 10 seconds. Long exhales. And let's go for one more round, pushing that foot through for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax. And deep breaths. Boy, that feels good, doesn't it? For me, a glute stretch is always more welcome than a hip flexor stretch, or a hamstring stretch for that matter. This one just feels amazing. And then we can slowly exit. Go ahead and shake both hips off. We're gonna go into one final mobility drill, and that's gonna be to improve our hip abduction, or the ability for our hips to move away from our center line. And for this one, we're gonna use a bear sit. As you know, if you are a complete beginner, if you are very tight, doing a butterfly or a half middle split even can just be very uncomfortable and very apprehensive. And a bear sit is a great introduction to improving the flexibility in our groin and adductors. So we're gonna start off by sitting up against a wall or a chair. We don't have to have our bums, right up against our wall. We can sit out at a bit of an angle, so that's okay there. We're gonna have our legs out and open, and then from there we're going to use our hands or our forearms to pry our knees down towards the floor until we find a stretch. Now, a few things to play around with would be to move our feet in a little closer towards each other, in towards ourselves, out away from ourselves, or forward away from us, like so. So just play around with the angle of your hips, knees, and feet to find a position that works for you. If you do want to bring your feet a lot closer together for more of a butterfly, that's completely fine. The most important thing here is that we're just moving our hips away from our body to work on that hip abduction. If your hips are feeling a bit sensitive or apprehensive, go ahead and place some blocks or supports under your knees or your calves, just so you feel a little bit more comfortable there. These blocks can be a bit iffy because they can fall over and stuff, so just use towels, pillows, whatever you have available to you. I had to do this a lot when I first started because my hips just did not feel comfortable in this position here at all. So we're gonna hold for 30 seconds. Again, if I start the contractions and you haven't held for 30 seconds, I would recommend doing that just like with every other stretch we've done, so we can sink and relax into that passive stretch a little bit before we begin our active work. So again, the knees have been pried apart, and we're gonna start our first round of contractions by pushing our knees up into our arms, but without actually allowing them to move. Start very, very lightly if you're new to this. Make sure this feels nice and safe. Go ahead and push up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. As you're pushing up, I want you to think about squeezing and contracting the insides of the legs here. 3, 2, 1. Now you're trying to pull your knees away from your arms. And again, they might not actually lift, so your knees might still be connected to your hands or your arms, and that's okay. But you're trying to pull your knees down towards the floor now. 3 more seconds. 2, 1, and relax. Sink back into that stretch. Take some deep breaths. And if you felt like that was more than enough for you, go ahead and peel your knees back in and have a rest. If not, stay in, take some deep breaths. We're gonna go for 2 more rounds. Let's begin driving our knees back up into our forearms for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. If you're feeling quite good, you can play around with starting to push up a little bit stronger than before. 3, 2, 1, and trying to pull the knees down towards the floor. Now you're thinking about squeezing the outsides of your hips. Pulling, pulling, pulling. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back on. Rest for a moment. Deep breaths. And again, remember that rule that I mentioned before about not pushing through any pain or pinching. If you do get pain pulling the knees down, there's no need to pull. You can just push up and relax instead. Same goes for when we're pushing up. If it doesn't really feel too safe to push the knees up into the hands, you can always exit that stretch slightly and then build some strength outside of that lengthened position, as we can be quite vulnerable there, especially when first starting. Let's go for 1 more round here, pushing those knees up into those forearms for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and actively try and pull the knees down towards the floor. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hands back on. Deep breaths. Last 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and use your hands to pull your knees back in together and give yourself a double pat on the back because you just completed that follow along routine, and that is not an easy feat, especially if you're a complete beginner and you haven't done a lot of this stuff before. Now, if your hips are feeling quite good and you want to do a bit more, there is absolutely no problem with doing this more. So once you've built up some capacity, doing multiple sets of each of these drills can be quite beneficial. So what you can do is you can play this video and go for a second round of everything. Even a third round can be quite beneficial. For a few of these stretches, I'm now doing 3 rounds for myself. I hope you enjoyed this style of mobility training where we build strength within the stretch. It's very effective for improving our ranges of motion and how resilient and robust we are in those ranges. Let me know how you went. Let me know if you had any questions, because I know I had a heap of questions when first starting this work, so don't be shy, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.